So one of the notes that I wanted to cover on the channel for the longest time was caramel. Are you guys a fan of caramel and fragrances? Hey, I'm a gourmand lover and I love my sweet fragrances, just like I like my sweet desserts. And it's a holiday weekend here in the USA, Thanksgiving weekend, and we're probably consuming a ton of delicious sweet treats. And I figured the best thing to do this weekend would be to do a video on caramel fragrances. Let me know if you're a fan of caramel and fragrances. And in today's video, I've got 20 delicious caramel fragrances. So if you want to find out about these caramel fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Sebastian. We're talking about caramel and fragrances. Do let me know if you're a fan of this note. I feel like it mixes pretty well with vanilla, amber, resins, balsams, and things like that. But once in a while, you'll see it with other notes as well. But we've got 20 fragrances, as I said. But before I get to the fragrances, I do want to mention to you guys that we dropped mystery box number 2. I think we might be sold out by the time this video airs. We did 375, a lot. It's been a popular one. We have 22 samples in here. We have a perfume notes book. It's basically a book that you take notes on fragrances you smell and things like that. And then there's also a sweet treat. So this is kind of like an advent calendar theme, which is, you can, take out the items and do one each day. You don't have to do it that way, but we kind of wanted to go with that theme since it is the holidays coming up. So if we still have a few more, we might drop maybe like 5 or 10 more. I'm uncertain we can. We have to ship the ones that are sold first before we can take inventory. But hopefully you were able to take advantage of this mystery box. This is a big one. Lots of samples in here. A lot of great houses that you might have not even heard about. There's a few that are well known in that box, but most of them are fairly unknown. So let's get started with the caramel fragrances. It's not ranked, but the way I'm doing this, starting out with really great ones, getting into the middle with less caramel or not favorites, and then getting back to towards the end with more favorites as well. But one of the first ones I want to talk to you about is Shea and Blue London's Salt and Caramel, this one right here. Are you a fan of this one? In fact, I came to the studio today. I've been sick, so if you haven't been noticing my congestion in the videos, I've been sick with a cold or flu. But I came to set up, and I was not going to shoot this video, but I was able to shoot it after I went and had dinner. I spritzed myself with this stuff, and it is really, really a great fragrance. It's also around $100 for 100 ml. It does not break the bank. It has notes of caramel, sea salt, Tonka, sandalwood. It's super, super delicious. And what I like about this is it's sweet, right? It's very sweet. But when you're cooking with ingredients, salt tones down the sweetness, and that's exactly what happens here with salt and caramel. It's super, super delicious. You got to try it. In fact, it's weird. I had an older bottle, and the older bottle didn't smell as great as the new bottle. And the new bottle is a new design. I don't know what happened. I don't know. It smells much better, and I'm putting it here because it's super delicious. This is Salt and Caramel from the house of Shea and Blue. A fabulous, fabulous caramel fragrance. Moving on to the house of Giardini di Toscana. It's Bianco Latte. This is a pretty hyped fragrance currently. It's all over everywhere, and now a local San Francisco store carries the line as well. Zegio Perfumery is carrying Giardini di Toscana, and Bianco Latte is in their store, although I think they're sold out already. Go figure. It's a very popular fragrance. And the fragrance is also not necessarily uber expensive. It's around $150 for 100 ml, so it won't break the bank, although the Shea and Blue is less expensive, but this is also really great. It's a caramelly, vanillic, milky, lactonic fragrance with loads of caramel, vanilla, coumarin, white musks. It does have this kind of fluffy, cloudy, marshmallowy consistency, but very milky, lactonic, and super, super delicious with caramel. This is a great, great fragrance. I fell in love with it as soon as I smelled it because I love gourmands. I love lactonic fragrances, and these are the kind of fragrances you would wear in the, autumn, winter, because they are so comforting and cozy. So this is Bianco Latte from the house of Giardini di Toscana. Have you guys discovered that house yet? Do let me know. Put a comment down and go catch my video on that house where I preview 6 of their fragrances fragrances. Is it 6? Yeah, 6. 6 of their fragrances with Joe, who has been doing videos with me here on the channel. Moving on to the house of XERJOFF, we've got LIRA from the CASAMORATI line. This was probably one of my very first XERJOFFs and very first caramel fragrances. I didn't really realize it was a caramel bomb, but it is. It's got lavender, licorice, vanilla, caramel, rose, jasmine, and I also get oranges from this one, quite a bit of oranges, and it's that kind of beautiful, sticky, ambery mixture of, you know, vanilla and caramel together with all these other notes. The orange really brightens things up, makes it for a more playful fragrance, but in the end it's a gourmand, very caramelly and vanillic, and super delicious. Lira is fantastic from the house of XERJOFF. If you don't know that one, do check it out. This next one, I wouldn't call it a gourmand, but still super delicious because I find patchouli to be super delicious. And this time we've got a fragrance with patchouli and caramel together. So I mentioned patchouli, chocolate cakey patchouli fragrances. Here we got something a bit different. It's Crush on Me from the house of Unique Luxury, where they've taken that kind of patchouli note that I like, the earthy kind of chocolatey kind of patchouli, mixed it with caramel in here to give you that kind of sticky patchouli experience with the overdose of the patchouli and the caramel. Along with these two notes, you've got ginger, lime, amber, saffron, iris, musk, rose, woods, and magnolia. It's pretty intense. It's an extrait de parfum, and this is definitely a gourmand for the patchouli lover. The patchouli totally stands out, and this patchouli is not necessarily going into the chocolate cakey direction too much. For me, I find the patchouli in this to be a bit more in line with something like Tempo from Diptyque, which is not necessarily uber chocolate cakey, but this is a super delicious fragrance. Crush on Me from the house of Unique Luxury. Definitely check that out. Next, going to a house called CRA-YON. It's Caramel Days. Are you guys familiar with this one? I recently discovered this. I actually did a video on the channel of their first 3 fragrances, and it's also a fairly inexpensive house. They're around $100 fragrances for 50 ml bottles, but this Caramel Days is really, really great. When I got my nose on this fragrance, I said to myself, I'm going to finally do a caramel fragrances video because this is really delicious smelling. I wore it once and I'm like, wow, for this price point, I can get something really delicious like this. I like it. So it's caramel, vanilla, coconut, cocoa, heliotrope, mandarin, frangipani, jasmine, orange, and ambroxan. Basically, it smells like a sweet, sticky treat. You know, caramel is always sticky and sweet. I like that about it. I love it in my ice cream. And here, it's not necessarily like that kind of dulce de leche caramel vanilla ice cream kind of combo. But when you strip away the ice cream, the vanillic ice cream, you're basically left with that caramel that's in there. This is what it reminds me of. So this is CRA-YON, a house that I haven't spoken too much about, but Caramel Days is delicious. Hopefully you guys get to try this. So next we've got 4 fragrances from the same house. They have caramel overdose here. So I'm surprised that they have lots of fragrances with caramel in it, but we're talking about the house of SORA DORA, and you guys should be hearing a lot about this house next year. I think they're finally getting distribution in the States, and you're going to be seeing their fragrances in local stores. But I really, really enjoy this house. Really have been a fan of it since I discovered it. In fact, I actually featured this fragrance in a Scent Club kit number 2. This is MANDORLE from the house of SORA DORA. It's Tonka, caramel, heliotrope, suede, woods, rum, cocoa, vanilla, almonds, cashmere, and white musk. So faintly, it has a bit of a reminder of something like Wajan. It's got a bit of a cherry vibe as well, but in the end, it's that kind of delicious, powdery, caramelly, vanillic, almondy gourmand, which hints at a bit of cherry and then also has that leathery suede touch as well. Super delicious. It's MANDORLE. If you guys bought kit number 2, you would have remembered that fragrance. Next, we've got one from the same house. Remember, 4 from the same house back to back. This is a fragrance called ORCHIDEE Rouge, this one right here. So this is the vanilla fragrance from this house, but this vanilla fragrance also kind of goes into the almondy caramel direction, but it doesn't necessarily remind you of MANDORLE. It's more about vanilla here. MANDORLE is kind of more nutty and more Wajan-like with a bit of cherry caramel touch. And of course that Suede here, this is more about vanilla. And even though they've got all these kind of notes that are, you know, helping this vanilla note, you're basically left with a vanillic fragrance. You've got booziness here for sure, sticky caramelly touches, ambery touches and spices and floral touches and the citruses as well. Sweet citruses in this case, but Orchidee Rouge is so delicious. It's a great vanilla. The only complaint I have about this one, it's a bit closer to the skin. It's a bit subdued, but it's absolutely fantastic. So Orchidee Rouge from the house of SORA DORA. Really yummy fragrance. Next, another fragrance from this house. Remember, we've got 4. It's BROCELIANDE, this one right here. Now, this one to me reminds me of a cocktail, a gourmand cocktail. More of a cocktail like... For me, I get like a mint mojito combo here. There's no mint mentioned here. There's definitely rum, lemons, vanilla, caramel, cinnamon, bergamot, lime, ginger, castoreum, civet, iris, styrax, sesame, and coriander. A lot of stuff going on in here. But it's mostly about the rum, lemons, vanilla, and caramel with that little bit of cinnamon that comes in as well. It does remind me of a mint mojito, but less of the mint, more about the mojito, the rum, and the booziness in there, and some kind of a green thing running throughout it. Not necessarily like in-your-face mint, but something in here does remind me of that. But the caramel contributes to its sticky sweetness, vanilla for its smoothness, and then of course spices, citruses, all of those things come to mind. There are animalic notes credited in here as well. For me, it doesn't get quite animalic, but depends on how sensitive you are to animalic notes. Once again, a really delicious fragrance from the house of SORA DORA. It's BROCELIANDE. The last one we're going to talk about this house is their latest fragrance called GIARDINI, this one right here. And this one to me is such a delicious sweet dessert experience. It's inspired by a tarte tatin from France. Are you guys familiar with this dessert? It's one of my favorites. When I go to France, I make sure to have one because I like that sticky, sweet, caramelly, apple, vanilla combo. That's super delicious, and that's basically what this is. It's got cinnamon, baked apple, puff pastry, caramel, almonds, vanilla, nutty notes, white musk, osmanthus, apricots, plums, peaches. Yeah, it does have fruity notes. Osmanthus creates fruitiness. The apricots, the plums, the peaches, all comes in to create this kind of fruitiness. But in the end, you've got that baked apple to give you that kind of tarte tatin experience as well with the cinnamon, just really, really great here. And this to me is like the ultimate in holiday fragrances. It's so super delicious and comforting. You do also experience a bit of butteriness as well, and I like that about it. Caramel to the max, super delicious. This is GIARDINI from the house of SORA DORA. And again, 4 fragrances from this house, all utilizing caramel in varying degrees, but I feel like the last one I talked about, GIARDINI, is the most caramel for me. So up next, we've got a bit of non-gourmandish fragrances that kind of, you know, dabble in gourmands. First of which is from the house of the different company. It's Oud for Love, this one right here. It is called Oud for Love. And I feel like the love comes in with all those sweet notes that are in here. And then, of course, the oud is basically the star of the show. But oud is mixed with caramel, amber, whiskey, castoreum, tolu, balsam, cloves, saffron, sandalwood, immortelle, heliotrope. The oud in this is a bit dirty, but I think all the gourmandish and the boozy notes, the caramel, of course, the spices, all tone it down. But if you're sensitive to oud, I think you should stay away from this one because I feel like the oud does have a bit of funk to it. But for me, all those gourmand notes, the boozy notes, the spices and everything, the powdery notes like the heliotrope, all create for a very beautiful experience. You've got to enjoy oud and you've got to enjoy gourmands, and this is the best of both worlds. So it's Oud for Love from the house of the different company. Next, we've got an inexpensive house, a Brazilian house called Sol de Janeiro. It's Cheirosa 62. Is it Cheirosa or is it Cheirosa? I just bought this because I was hearing a lot about this house. I bought it from Amazon. It was like around $75. And I like it. I bought it mostly because of pistachios, but it does have an overdose of caramel in it. For me, it reminds me of more of a designer fragrance rather than a niche house. Because when I wear it, I feel like the notes are not necessarily the most expensive or the ingredients they use. But I think it's super delicious and definitely quality fragrance, and it depends on what your budget is, and if your budget is under $100, this will satisfy. And I do enjoy this bottle. It kind of looks like a disco ball, kind of like, you know, twirling around when you're dancing or something. I kind of like that about that bottle. But it's caramel, vanilla, pistachios, almonds, salt, sandalwood, heliotrope, and jasmine. I think this line is very, very hyped currently. They have a lot of body products, and this is the only fragrance I've sampled. Sure, it's caramelly, sure, it's vanillic, and it's a bit pistachio nutty, along with the almonds as well. Salt does come in a little bit, but you know, it's definitely a quality fragrance. But again, for me, it does remind me of designer fragrances. When you're comparing them next to niche fragrances that use really, really quality ingredients, this does have that kind of designer kind of quality to it. So Sol de Janeiro Cheirosa 62 is another fragrance that features caramel. Moving on to a house called Nuit Nomade. This is sugar, leather. This one right here. Again, this is gourmand mixed in with some non-gourmand notes. Like the leather is pretty prominent in here, and it does have a bit of a funk. If you don't like leather, you might want to stay away from this one. It also kind of hints at something like Wajan, and of course, Wajan has spices like cinnamon, but this one has an overdose of sticky caramel. You'll see that and experience that sweetness against the warm spiciness of the cinnamon, and then you have some ambery touches like the labdanum and the amorous that comes in. It doesn't wear very complex, but for me, leather seems to be more complex than other notes, so you do have a bit of depth with the leather, and of course, as I said, it does get a bit of funky with the leather touch. But if you like that combo, just like the Oud for Love, it's kind of something more masculine and rough against gourmandish notes. I think you should definitely try Sugar Leather from the house of Nuit Nomade. Oh, and then we've got a fragrance that has the combo of roses with caramelly notes as well. And we're going to the house of XERJOFF's. It's a Join the Club collection, and it's K-Bridge Club, this one right here. So this one to me does remind me a little bit of Intense Cafe and that kind of collection of milky, ambery, lactonic, rose, and gourmand note kind of fragrances. But this is in the style of XERJOFF, and you definitely have that kind of creamy, sticky, caramelly note that's in here against two types of roses. It's definitely very, very rosy, and of course it's also very, very gourmand with lots of caramel and vanilla here. If you have Intense Cafe, you might not need this one, but then again, you might not be into Intense Cafe. You might like the way this one is with the rose and the gourmand notes together. So this is K-Bridge Club, and it's XERJOFF Join the Club collection. And then up next, going to the house of Kerosene, it's Unknown Pleasures. This is definitely sticky caramel, loads of it with lemons and vanilla. There's that Earl Grey tea note in here with bergamot, honey, and tonka. Definitely has that sticky quality, but also kind of a lemon chiffon cake quality as well. There's definitely a doughy consistency. You do experience that really delicious lemon sweet cakey kind of combo of notes, but a really, really great combo of notes here to create a really wonderful lemony gourmand fragrance. So it's Unknown Pleasures from the house of Kerosene. Then moving on to the house of Maison Tahiti, it's Vanextasy, this one right here. You guys familiar with this one? So this is a collection of fragrances that focuses on vanilla, or coffee, or cacao, and this is one of the better ones from this collection. Definitely a vanilla caramel combo with a bit of beachy coconutty touch in there. Of course, you've got milk, Peru balsam, sandalwood, and cedar to, you know, create and round out the fragrance as well, and it creates for a really wonderfully delicious vanilla caramel fragrance. For sure, you're going to get the coconutty touches, and I feel like it's in there to give you this kind of a detour where you're mostly into this vanilla caramelly direction, and you've got this kind of like a coconutty beachiness that's in there to wake you up and not get too used to the vanilla caramel touch. But this is super amazing. This is from the house of Maison Tahiti. It's called Vanextasy. Then we're going to a house called Al Jazeera Fragrances. This is a fragrance called Capri, this one right here. Look at that bottle. I need to do a video on this house. I've got 5 of their fragrances. I'd like to do a video. And this one to me is not necessarily gourmand too much, but it has notes of caramel, apples, patchouli, jasmine, ambroxan, oak moss, and cedar. To me, it kind of reminds me of a caramelly take on Baccarat Rouge, or fragrances in that direction. Sure, you get the apples, it's there with the caramel. That's a delicious combo. I love that about, you know, caramel, apples and caramel do blend beautifully together, but you have the patchouli here, you have the jasmine, you have that oak moss and ambroxan in here, so it gives you that kind of a vibe. So if you like that idea of something that's Baccarat Rouge-like, check this one out from Al Jazeera. Parfums or fragrances, it's called Capri. Then another fragrance that also focuses on something that is Tarte Tatin like. Remember we had Gianni here from SORA DORA, and this is from the house of Jussé. This is La Tarte Tatin, and they're totally different in that their inspiration is the same. This is caramel, brown sugar, vanilla bean, apple, and tonka and salt. They smell totally different. This one seems to be a bit more simplistic. The Gianni seems to be a bit more complex. The apple is definitely the only fruity note in here, whereas the Gianni has more fruity presence and so on. So if you like the idea of Tarte Tatin, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm obsessed with this dish, this dessert. It's so delicious, especially when you have it freshly done and you scoop some ice cream on top, vanilla ice cream for sure. It's a delicious delicacy, and here you get that experience when you wear this one. So this is La Tarte Tatin from the house of Jussé. Check that out if you don't know it. Then we've gone to the House of Oud. It's Dates Delight, this one right here. Are you guys familiar with this house? You know, I have to say their bottles are amazing, and some of their fragrances are also really amazing. This is definitely one of them. This one is kind of more of a caramelly fragrance in a Middle Eastern direction because it has an overdose of dates here. There's lots of dates here, and if you're a fan of dates, you're going to really like this one. I'm obsessed with dates. I love the way they taste, especially when you stuff them with like nuts or something. Really one of my favorite delicacies to have. And here I get to experience dates with cinnamon, maybe dates drizzled with caramel and honey, with sugar and vanilla and benzoin, labdanum, tonka, and coumarin. So it's basically very ambery and also very sugary and vanillic. Of course, you've got the honey and caramel in here as well. Super delicious, very delicious caramelly gourmand with dates and cinnamon. This is Dates Delight from the House of Oud. Next, a newer fragrance from the house of Plume Impression. This is Royal Bourbon. This one right here. Are you familiar with this house? I did a video once again with Joe on the channel. This was not featured in that video. This is a fairly new fragrance. Go catch the video if you want to find out more about this house. I think if I was to rank their fragrances now with this fragrance, this would end up at number 1 or number 2. I haven't decided yet. But this is also very delicious with the booziness. Lots of caramel, cinnamon, vanilla, ginger, rum, tobacco, licorice, black pepper. Oh my god, you've got the caramel in here, the gourmand notes, you've got the booziness, you've got the tobacco-ish touches. It's a holiday fragrance come alive, and this is perfect. This to me smells like the holidays and all the desserts you're having after you're eating the Thanksgiving dinner. Remember, you have all that dessert left over along with all the turkey. You're having it the next day. You're having the leftover dessert. So the whole house smells of this all sweet, spicy, boozy kind of notes. This definitely captures that right here. So it's Royal Bourbon from the house of Plume Impression. Let me know if you're a fan of that house. And last but not least, we're going to a house called Noem. This is Soma. Are you guys familiar with this house? I'll be speaking about this house more further down the line in the next couple of weeks, but I wanted to highlight this one because it has a pretty prominent caramel note along with rum, tonka beans, heliotrope, vanilla, suede, labdanum, and cacao. To me, also, this color of this bottle, I don't know if it's the color of the bottle, but when I'm wearing it, I get a cherry vibe, almost like there's this cherries mixed in together. Sure, it does have that kind of Wajan-like presence, but more in a cherry direction. I don't know what it is with this one, but I'm getting cherries when I wear it, but it smells really delicious. It doesn't smell like lost cherry, like when you're wearing it, but there's a hint of it that it reminds me of it, but more in a subdued way kind of a thing, because the cherries are there and not there, but it's really delicious with vanilla caramel and the booziness of the rum. It does have this kind of settlement of a suede, soft suede leather when it's drying down, but again, it's a super delicious fragrance from this house, Noem, called Soma. That is the last fragrance I'm talking about today. Let me know your thoughts on these caramel fragrances. First of all, let me know if you're a fan of caramel and fragrances. If I've missed any fragrances, if I did not feature something that you're a fan of that features caramel, do let me know what it is. Put a comment down below so I can find out. But either way, guys, hope you guys are having a great Thanksgiving weekend. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. One last thing I should say, if there are any boxes of Mystery Box Kit number 2 left, please do take advantage of it before we run out. Again, as of the shooting of this video, there was not much left, so I'm assuming by the time it airs, we'll be sold out. We might be dropping a few more, but not that many. We have to take inventory and ship everything we have before we drop any more. But either way, mystery box kit number 2 was dropped a few days, well, not even a few days ago, just a day ago actually, and we're sold out. This is the day before this video airs. Anyway, see you guys later. Bye bye.